Hello everyone and welcome to another review. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel and watching my videos. This time we have a fragrance from the designer house of Audigier, and the fragrance is called Ed Hardy Skulls and Roses. This is a fragrance that was released in September of 2012. The perfumers for this fragrance are Marypierre, Julien, and Adriana, Medina. Both of those perfumers have actually collaborated in making a few other fragrances from the Ed Hardy line, but with the exception of a Harajuku Lovers fragrance, the two haven't really made any other notable compositions or fragrances that have really gotten any press from the fragrance industry or the YouTube fragrance community. Now, this fragrance is released under the Ed Hardy line. Audigier is actually the fashion designer. He started off his career at the age of 15 making denim. It wasn't until he partnered up with Von Dutch, which is when they popularized the trucker hat in the early 21st century. Now, many of his fragrances and clothing is inspired by Japanese tattoo artists, or he's a tattoo artist, but he's famous for his Japanese tattoos, and his name is Don Ed Hardy. And they took his tattoos and they made it the face or the image of many of the clothing that he's released. So he started off with hats and shirts. Eventually he went on to make denim and shoes, and then in 2008 is when he released the first fragrance, or the first pair of fragrances, because their fragrances are always released in pairs, and that was Ed Hardy for men and Ed Hardy for women. To date they have 14 fragrances in their catalog, 7 for men, 7 for women, so they cater to both sexes evenly. And then a little bit later on in 2008 is when they released what is arguably the most popular fragrance from the line, and that is Ed Hardy Love and Luck, which is a citrus heavy fragrance that gets compared a lot to another fragrance from the House of Creed called Millésime Imperial. In 2012, September to be precise, is when they released this couple of fragrances, Ed Hardy Skulls and Roses for him and for her, and that makes these two fragrances the most recent fragrance releases from the company. Now, with the exception of the color of the skull and the color of the box, the two fragrances, the two bottles actually look identical. So please be wary when you're shopping for this one in public or online, because the box doesn't actually say for him or pour homme on it. So if you want the men's fragrance, get the one in the black box. If you want the women's counterpart, which contains notes of strawberry and caramel, get the one in the white box. So just be wary of that as a consumer. Now, previous fragrances were named after popular themes from Ed Hardy's line. So Love and Luck, Villain, Hearts and Daggers. This one is meant to embody the symbol of the brand, which is the skull and the rose. Thank you for watching my video. Next up we have the presentation for Ed Hardy Skulls and Roses by Audigier. Here we have the presentation for Ed Hardy Skulls and Roses by Audigier. This is a fragrance that's available in eau de toilette concentration and two sizes, 2.5 fluid ounces and 3.4 fluid ounces. This is actually the small bottle. First up we have the box, and over here in the front you're going to notice this embossed silver skull symbol with the rose out of it, sticking out of its mouth. Up here at the top you're going to get Skulls and Roses, the name of the fragrance, and the name of the line, Ed Hardy, in the popular cursive font that you always see. Down here at the bottom you have some information like the concentration, the size, and on the sides here you're going to get that same skull and rose symbol along with the Ed Hardy insignia right below it. At the top you get that same Ed Hardy insignia, and then at the very bottom you get the UPC code as well as the serial number, which coincides with one found at the bottom of the bottle. Mine is 2KB10. Now, as far as the bottle goes, again, it's black. The women's counterpart is white, so if you're buying it in stores, please make sure you get the black box if you're looking for the men's version, not the white one. Now, it's a shape of a skull biting on a rose. The rose is actually an accessory that comes apart. It doesn't really serve any purpose other than to give the bottle some aesthetic appeal, but it clicks back into place. And as far as the attention to detail is concerned, over here on the right side of the skull on the neck, you're going to find the Ed Hardy insignia embossed in there. I do think that's nice. And then down here at the very bottom you have a sticker with some information on it, and again the serial number, which coincides with the one found on the box. Now, in order to reveal the atomizer, you do have to remove the plastic cap. Because it's blended well with the shape of the bottle, it's actually hard to get a grip on it, although the bottle itself fits into the palm of your hand very nicely. It's hard to remove the cap, so one thing that I've noticed that helps is rotating it a little bit, and that allows you to get a good grip on it. As far as the cap goes, nothing really to marvel at. And the atomizer does have a tendency of squirting at the end. It's not the best in the game, but please keep that in mind. I think it gets the job done. But other than that, there's nothing really more to say about this one. That has been the presentation of Ed Hardy Skulls and Roses by Christian Audigier. As far as the smell goes for this fragrance, it is an aromatic fougere, so you can't expect it to smell like other fragrances within that genre or classification. As a matter of fact, right off the bat, the first 4 notes that I expected to smell for this fragrance, with the exception of possibly a few variations, are lavender, bergamot, oak moss, and vetiver. And with the exception of one of those notes, which is the vetiver, it actually does contain the other 3. So I think the vetiver that's not included in this fragrance kind of subtracts or takes away from that green undertone or even that moistened quality that this fragrance could have potentially had. With the exception of that, I think this one does smell modern. It smells clean. There's a fresh quality to it as well. And I think that's primarily attributed to the lavender note. In the opening, once you spray it, for about the first 10 seconds, I would say, you're going to get this heavy blast of Perfumers alcohol. However, do not be discouraged. I think that's because this one is an eau de toilette concentration, which would set the alcohol content at about 85 to 90%, which is average. But after those first 10 seconds, you are going to get this bergamot note that starts to come through. Now, I think that makes it very appealing if you were to smell it at a department store, so the introduction is very nice. But I think this is one of those fragrances that you really do need to sample on skin in order to allow yourself to make a more informed opinion as to whether or not you like the fragrance, because the bergamot note is so short-lived. It's ephemeral. It only lasts for about another 10 minutes, and then after that, you're going to get this lavender note that really comes through in the composition. Now, the lavender note does make this fragrance smell warm, comforting. It almost gives this relaxing aura to the fragrance, which I really do like. And to me, I hate to say this because I don't want to give off a wrong impression, but it gives me a feeling, I think, in combination with this musk note that it contains, that's somewhat reminiscent to freshly laundered clothes. And I kind of do like that about this fragrance. It's a nice way to kind of supplant that clean smell that you would get from showering. And I'm not saying, or I'm not encouraging anybody to use this as an alternative to showering, but supplement with this fragrance. And to me, it smells like freshly laundered clothes. That could possibly be because lavender could be a note in laundry detergent, so maybe that's what's allowing me to make that association. But with the exception of the lavender, you have this musk note that also contributes in making this smell clean, and even, I think, putting it a little more on the edge of being a masculine fragrance. Although a few of the other notes in the composition could come across as androgynous, but it's the oak moss note with the help of the musk note that really make it a little more masculine. Now, when I say oak moss, do not be discouraged into thinking that this fragrance is going to smell like other 80s powerhouses like Polo by Ralph Lauren or Dracar Noir by Guy Laroche, because it doesn't. This one is very modern, it's contemporary, and as a matter of fact, it has gotten compared to another fragrance by Abercrombie & Fitch called Fierce. Now, I certainly do see a comparison. Of course, keep in mind that no two fragrances are ever 100% identical, so this is one that you should definitely sample before you buy it. But for me, this fragrance smells very much like the heart of Abercrombie & Fitch's Fierce. And when you consider the price point, that this fragrance can be had online on Amazon for, I think, about $33, and that's the big size, the 3.4 ounce, the even bigger size than this. I think that makes it a great alternative or substitute for lovers of Abercrombie & Fitch's Fierce. This is a fragrance that smells quite similar to it and can be had for a much cheaper price, so keep that in mind. So you're going to get this lavender note that's not as sharp or as pungent and bright as a lavender note that you would find in, you know, A Taste of Heaven by Kilian or a Lavender Palm by Tom Ford Private Blend. And I hate to drop those fragrances as a frame of reference, but they're really the first two fragrances that serve to make my point, and they are the first two fragrances that really come to mind. But you're going to get this mild mossy quality in the background that I think gives it a masculine appeal, and you're also going to get a cardamom note in the opening that isn't as culinary as you would expect it to be, but it does contribute in giving this fragrance a little bit of a sweetness. So that, partnered up with the lavender note, actually makes for quite an appealing introduction. Now, there is something about it, and of course I want to bring the price point back into play, that kind of gives this quality a manufactured appeal. And I don't want to say synthetic because that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does smell kind of generic. Again, not a bad thing. I still like to wear this fragrance. But of course, with that being said, I wear this one more so in casual scenarios. I think in other social scenarios like night out and if you're going on a date, there are other fragrances that would fit the bill for this one. But in terms of compliments and complaints, this fragrance is more likely to get you a compliment. As a matter of fact, my girlfriend loves this fragrance, my brother's girlfriend loves this fragrance, and I have gotten a few compliments from ladies at work wearing this fragrance. So wear this one very comfortably. It's nice, it's clean, it's contemporary, it's modern, it's not refined, but it has this youthful quality to it. It is a little bit masculine due to the musk and the oak moss, and it's a fragrance that has the potential to garner a lot of compliments depending on the confidence that you employ when you wear this fragrance. So for that reason, I actually do like this fragrance a lot. It's not a favorite of mine, but I am happy to have it in my collection. Next up, we have the rating for Ed Hardy's Skulls and Roses by Christian Audigier. First up, we have uniqueness and overall smell, and I ended up giving this fragrance a 5 out of 10. There is a fragrance that this fragrance, like I said, gets compared to, and that's a fragrance from the house of Abercrombie & Fitch called Fears. And because that fragrance came out before this one did, I do think that in some way this may be somewhat of a copycat off that fragrance, although the two fragrances are not 100% identical. So this is a fragrance that I would strongly recommend you go out there and sample before actually pulling the trigger into purchasing this one, just because of the comparison. But because that fragrance came out before this one did, I do think, in my opinion, that this one lacks aesthetic merit. It's not a game changer, it's not a groundbreaking release by any means, and it doesn't really cross any creative boundaries. But because it is a fragrance that you're likely to get complimented on, and it's safe, and it's a nice and soothing fragrance, I ended up giving it a 5 out of 10. Next up, we have longevity, and this fragrance earned from me a 6 out of 10. It does last 4 to 6 hours on my skin, although it does settle down to a sort of a skin scent. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, so I give it the higher score. So I give this one a 6 out of 10. Next up, for projection, I also gave it a 6 out of 10. This one projects for about 2 hours after initial application. It doesn't really fill the room. It radiates a little, I would say about an arm's length. And for an eau de toilette concentration, I actually think that's very good projection. So I gave it a 6 out of 10. And next up, we have versatility, and I ended up giving this fragrance a 5 out of 10 again. I took it down a notch just because it is marketed for men, and because of the musk and the oak moss note, I do see this one being more of a men's than a women's fragrance. In terms of the compositional nature, I think it lacks that refined quality that would allow this fragrance to be worn semi-formally or even formally, and I don't think it's sweet or playful enough to be worn in night out scenarios. But I've worn this fragrance casually, and I love it as a casual fragrance. I think this one is an excellent contender for a signature scent fragrance. And I think in terms of the age range, it is geared more toward a younger crowd, but anyone could really wear this fragrance. So wear it casually if you're going food shopping, go to the movies, to the mall, you know, running any sort of errands. I think this one is a perfect fragrance to be worn for that type of a social scenario. And in terms of the climate conditions, I think this one is geared more toward the spring and the summer because of its compositional nature. The lavender and think the bergamot, and I don't think this one would really stand or endure the harsh climate conditions of the fall and the winter. So geared more toward the hotter weather. 5 out of 10 for versatility. Last up, we have presentation, and like I said in the presentation segment of my review, I'm kind of indifferent toward this fragrance. I know people who bought it just because of the bottle. I know people who didn't buy it because of the bottle. They think it's tacky. I don't really care. I bought it just to see if the comparisons between this fragrance and Abercrombie & Fitch's Fierce are true, and indeed they are. But again, this fragrance does do something that hasn't been done before, so I ended up giving it a 7 out of 10, and that earns this fragrance an overall score, or an average score, of 5.8 out of 10. So there you have it. That was my review of Ed Hardy's Skulls and Roses by Christian Audigier. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. If you would like to see the criteria that I use for grading, I've left the link for that in the description section below. Also, if you would like to join my Facebook group, I would love to have you as part of the family. I've left the link for that in the description section below as well. Again, this has been Steven with another fragrance review from Redolessence. Thanks for watching.